Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of A Mic on the Podium with me, Michael Seal. Before we start, I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and to also wish you a Happy New Year. Whilst 2020 afforded me the opportunity to speak to so many conductors and to start this podcast, it has, for the vast majority of us, been a terrible year, and one can only hope that 2021 sees a change in all of our fortunes sooner rather than later. If nothing else, I can guarantee new episodes of this podcast well into the summer and beyond. Please tell your friends and family about the podcast, and please do leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, as it helps the show reach a larger audience. Today, I conduct a conversation with a conductor whose career has gone from playing the clarinet in two of the world's greatest orchestras to becoming a music director or principal conductor in Sweden, Norway, the Czech Republic, and his native Germany. It is a real pleasure to welcome Karl-Heinz Steffens. Karl-Heinz, it's lovely to talk to you today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm on vacation. How can it be bad?
And how has Corona and lockdown been for you? I'm thinking about, personally, I haven't looked at a single score through all of this. I've sort of been divorced from conducting and music making. What's it been like for you?
Yeah, it was the same. I mean, we were sitting at home for many weeks, and you suddenly experience something that you never experienced before. You're not able to do your profession, to do your job. So that was not easy. But on the other hand, privately, for the family, as a conductor, you travel so much, you are away so much. I still have two pretty young boys, sons, and it was the best possible time now to spend so much time with them, with the family. It was actually a great time for us privately.
Mm. Well, as you just said, you're on holiday, you're on vacation in the Moselle, which is where I know that you were born and from. So can you tell me how music first came into your life as a child, how it first touched you, and your first experiences with music?
Look, I'm grown up. I was growing up here in a little village called Luxem. This is in the Mosel area, and I grew up with wonderful parents, having nothing to do with classical music. But I grew up in the village band, brass band, called Musikverein, and so I started there to practice the clarinet, and I don't know what happened to me when I was 15. Suddenly I realized that music making would be my life, and I started to discover classical music, everything by my own. I'm a total self-made man in a way. I studied all the stuff, and so it started seriously. But everything started when I started with the clarinet when I was 10. Here in this little village. Yeah.
And did you choose the clarinet, or was it chosen for you?
There was a Sunday morning where the music band, invited all the children from the village to come to the old schoolhouse to try out some instruments, because they wanted to open a children's orchestra. And I was 10, and of course I wanted to play the trombone or the trumpet, something very loud. When you are 10, you want to play something like that. But I was not able to produce one single note on a trumpet or on a trombone, but I was able to produce the tone on the clarinet. That was actually the reason why they put me into the clarinet. For me, when I was 10, it was a disaster, because only girls played the clarinet. But later, when I was 15, it was actually already getting much better, I have to say, with the girls. So it was a coincidence, I don't know, that I suddenly ended up with this instrument. And it made me actually happy through my life.
And then going on, I'm assuming you went to a university or a music school, and the clarinet was everything by now. You knew that you wanted to be a clarinetist.
Yeah, I knew that from let's say age 15, 16, it was clear for me that I wanted to be a clarinetist. But it was a huge dream, because no one in my family, no one in the surrounding here had had ever anything to do with a professional musician, or only my teacher was here in Trier in the Stadttheater, in the little opera house. He was clarinet player there. But it was something very special that the little boy from this village wanted to be a musician. But I finished the school. I did my army service at that time in an army band. And at this time, I practiced already really a lot. I think I started with 15, 16 to practice every day, 4 to 5 hours. And then that was actually, I was keeping that pace until I was 25 or something like this. And yeah, so then I studied in Stuttgart with Ulf Rodenhäuser, and then the whole story began.
It's a very similar story to me. I saw a TV program when I was 15 about the London Symphony Orchestra, and I realized that people were getting paid to go and travel around the world and earning money and pocket money. And I thought, that's what I want to do. And from that moment until I got into the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, that's all I wanted to do. It's sort of all other dreams of doing anything just disappeared.
Yeah, it was a little bit the same with me. Also, when I was a young boy, I was then 16, 17, 18, I was already teaching a little bit here in the music school, in the local music school, and I had gigs. And honestly, I was one of the richest young boys in the whole area here, because I made already then quite nice money in comparison to the other guys who had to go and harvest the grapes, it was a different story. So it was actually always very nice to be a musician, already at that age.
So at this stage, if you're studying in Stuttgart, you will have now been playing in orchestras. At any point so far, did you at all think about conducting? Or were you like me? I mean, I did one short year of study in conducting, but it was just another degree. I wasn't thinking of being a conductor. For me, it was still playing in orchestras. What was it like for you?
Honestly, I have to admit that when would I get to know classical music? So it came through the radio, and I recorded it with an old tape recorder of my father. And so I recorded all the Bruckner symphonies and all the stuff that actually now is so important to me. And already at this time, with 16, 17, I was sitting with a tape recorder in my room and actually tried to get some scores from my pocket money or from my money I made, and conducted the scores with the tape, with the music. So I always thought that this is the climax of being a musician, to conduct, because then you don't have only your instrument, you have the whole picture in front of you, and that interest was always very interesting to me. The clarinet thing went so well. I got the jobs. I was successful, and I'm married, had suddenly 2 children. And then I was in Frankfurt, Bayerischer Rundfunk, and then it was quite, maybe a little bit too easy. It should have been a little bit more hard. Then I would have get into the conducting much earlier, I have to say. But I always wanted to conduct. It's like a football player, you play while you are young and fresh, and then some of them want to become a good team manager. And I'm such a guy, I think.
It's interesting that, I looked back and thought, yeah, I think I always wanted to be a conductor. And I've worked out that actually the violin was just a means for me to play in orchestras so that I could learn to become a conductor through playing in an orchestra. It could have been the clarinet, it could have been the timpani, it could have been the trombone, but it happened to be that I could play the violin well enough to play in a professional orchestra. But conducting was always there at the very back of my brain. Because I was like you, I used to sit at home with my tape recorder with my scores thinking, how does this work? How do you conduct this? You've just mentioned that you went out into the profession, and the two big orchestras that really jump off your CV are the Bavarian Radio Orchestra and then, of course, the Berliner Philharmoniker.
Yeah.
What were those times like playing in those two orchestras? And well, for instance, who was conducting when you were at the Bavarian Radio? Who was the boss then?
When I started at the Bavarian Radio, it was Colin Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And then Colin finished, and then Laurie Marcel came.
Mm.
You know, I was never ever thought that I would be as good to get into the Bayerische Rundfunk. This was at that time the second German orchestra. I mean, there was always a big Philharmoniker, Berliner Philharmoniker in Karajan, of course.
Yeah.
But there was a second line that was also super important and super famous. That was Bayerische Rundfunk at that time with Raphael Kubelik. I played one of his last concerts, and I will never ever forget this. And then there was a time with Colin, and it made me really. It was a great time to be there. It's. I think it's still, or even more than it used to be, but a world famous orchestra, and was a wonderful orchestra, and it were great years in Munich. And then came Berlin Philharmonic, of course. But in the Munich, they were not happy that I made the step to Berlin. Of course, I mean, they were a little bit insulted that I had this idea to go to Berlin. But of course, Berlin for a German, Berliner Philharmoniker is everything. It's the dream of dreams. And suddenly I had the possibility, and then I went. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's just a dream for any German. I think it's a dream for most orchestral musicians, you know, to get a job with the Berlin Philharmonic. So how long were you in Bavaria before you left for Berlin? And what year did you arrive in Berlin? And was it still Karajan when you started in Berlin?
No, I was in Bavarian Radio from 1989 until 2000. And from 2000 until 2008, I was with the Berlin Philharmonic. And when Berlin Philharmonic, I've basically played the last concerts and tours and so on of Claudio Abbado, and then I basically started with Simon.
It's so similar how the timings that, you know, you probably played for Simon for about 8 years. Same with me. I played for him his last 8 years in Birmingham. Last 6 or 7 years in Birmingham. I never got to play for Abbado, and I've heard that Abbado rehearsals was somebody described them as a sort of a mystic event that, you know, that he didn't seem to say very much, but things always got better and worked out. What were Abbado rehearsals like? Because I never went to one. I played in plenty of Simon's rehearsals, but never ever played for Abbado.
Yeah, it is interesting that Claudio Abbado, he never really spoke, you know, in the rehearsal. There was a beginning, and sometimes I turned over to my Italian colleague, Daniele Damiano, who was the first bassoon, is still the first bassoon. And I asked him, does this man actually speak a language? I mean, what does he say actually? What does he speak? Can you have a conversation with him? Because in the rehearsal, the professional environment, he never actually, he said maybe, yeah, clarinet, piano, maybe piano, posaune, too loud, maybe too loud. You know, you thought, what the hell? What is so famous about this man? Always when the concert started, you realize that everything what was Claudio Abbado was his concert appearance and his concert shape. You know, how he shaped the music, and that was very special. Claudio Abbado was a concert man, a man for the evening, typical Italian conductor. And so I experienced great concerts with him, really amazing. And there was something, especially when he got older and then he was suddenly very sick. and then there was this a special aura around him, which was very special.
So it must have been quite a shock. No, of course, the orchestra chose Simon. It must have been quite a shock, therefore, to go from somebody who didn't say very much in rehearsals to Simon, who you could argue is more of a rehearsal man than an evening man. He loves rehearsing, Simon. So was that a bit of a shock, a change to the system, or as I said, was it you knew what was coming?
I mean, the orchestra really chose Simon Rattle very carefully. They chose him deliberately, because it's always the same. Every orchestra has for some years somebody, and then they choose exactly the opposite of this person as a new one, because many people complain about the old one, and then comes the new. It's always the new hero, the new prophet is coming. And then after some years, also this gets complicated, and then another one comes. So you can see it, Furtwängler. Karajan was completely different to Furtwängler. Then Claudio Abbado was the exact opposite of Karajan. And then Simon was the exact opposite of Abbado. And now Petrenko is actually totally different like Simon. I think that's what an orchestra always feels like. They need change. And Simon was, of course, a big change.
Mm. Yeah, well, again, in Birmingham, I was there at the end of Simon, and Zachary was the complete opposite. And then Andrus was the complete opposite of Zachary. And and so on and so on. I don't think it will ever change. I wanted to pick your brains before we leave the Berlin Philharmonic and go into your conducting career. Obviously, the Berlin Philharmonic, it plays in such a way very much together within itself for all sorts of reasons, because of the way it's always been, and the way that it had to be with Karajan towards the end of his life, and then you just said with Abbado, not really saying much. What was it about the players and playing in that orchestra that you could take forward into being a conductor? What sort of thought processes about orchestral playing did you think, do you know what, when I stand on the podium, these are the things I'm going to concentrate on?
Yeah, it's sometimes when I was playing in Bayerischer Rundfunk, and I was playing with people like Leonard Bernstein or Carlos Kleiber, I thought, oh my God, no, this is impossible. I will never, ever. I want to be a conductor so desperately, but when I see these guys, how is it possible to compete with something like this? And then came the Berlin Philharmonic, and of course there was the same kind of calibers, like Simon, like Barenboim, Beta, Muti, whatever. And but maybe I grew older, and the inner, how do you say, the drive was so strong that even they couldn't prevent me from trying it out. And there was a moment, I remember, I always had the score on my desk, and I remember in an opera thing we did Idomeneo, and I had the score there, and I was learning. Simon was conducting, and there was some moment when I was supposed to play, and I didn't, because I was at the moment turning the pages in my score, checking out something with the singer, what I heard there. And then Simon said, Kalle, but sorry, you have to play the clarinet now. And then I went home, and I thought, he's right. I mean, I have to decide. I have to decide. You cannot, you always are sitting in between. So came the moment to say, no, I will try to become a conductor.
Mm. Did you stop completely playing the clarinet after that? What I mean by that is when I came to stop playing the violin in 2014, I literally stopped. I've barely played a note since. I could have been offered extra work at the back of the CBSO or at back of other orchestras, but I decided, no, I'm going to be a conductor from this day forward and no more. What did you do? Did you phase it out, or did you just cut it dead?
I have to say, in the first years, I hardly played the clarinet. It went, so many things went on. I took this job in Halle, suddenly being from first clarinet of Berlin Philharmonic into a music director music director of an opera house. So it was so much to do, so much new things, and the clarinet was really getting dusty in the cave. But then after some years, I realized, wow, it is kind of a treasure that you are able to play an instrument, not only not good, but maybe very good or something like this, and that you are able to express things that you cannot express as a conductor, for especially in chamber music. So I started to accept a few little things here on a festival with friends, and play with my wife. She's a pianist, and now I think I found quite a nice balance. It's still maybe not enough. Sometimes the instrument stays in the case for 3 months, but I take it out. I do some chamber music, and I kind of take care of it a little bit more than I used to do in the beginning of my conducting career, because it's actually very it's good. It's a very good how to say, counterpoint to the conducting.
Mm. Well, I've not quite got there yet to chamber music. Maybe if lockdown continues in the UK, I'll actually put some strings on my violin and pick it back up again. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. The problem I had was that people were saying to me, if you accept work as a violinist whilst you're trying to become a conductor, nobody will see you as taking conducting seriously, which is why I cut it dead. And it seemed to work, and I've never looked back, and I am actually now conducting. But yeah, maybe it's time I should do some.
But you see, the one person who really helped me incredibly a lot was and is still Daniel Barenboim. And Daniel said to me 12, 13 years ago when I started the whole business, and I told him, should I really take this offer in Halle and go there as a music director? You think I can make it, and so on? And he says, if you don't do it, then nobody will take you serious. Nobody takes a conductor serious that is still an orchestra musician, because people and the public, they think in drawers. There's orchestra musician, instrumentalist, soloist, conductor. You have to be in a drawer. If you are in between, it's not. You're always floating in between. And he says, Daniel Barenboim said about himself, he says, this is what I have to encounter my whole life. Some people say I'm a good conductor and a bad pianist, and others say he should not conduct, he should only play the piano because this is what he can do. All these things. And you have to live with that, with this kind of double talent. But so I did it in the beginning. I hardly took even the clarinet almost out of my biography. But now it's back in, and maybe the career is kind of stable, and I don't care what people think anyway, and or critics think. But still, I mean, I come sometimes to when I conduct in Germany, the first line of the review is always Karl-Heinz Steffens, the former principal clarinet of the Berliner Philharmoniker. And you can say 50-50. Some of them say he should have stayed at the Berliner Philharmoniker, should have stayed away from the conducting. And others say they acknowledge what I'm doing now, and they can even say something positive about it. But there's always this 50-50 feeling.
Before we get to Halle and also Deutsche Staatsphilharmonie Rheinland-Pfalz, which is a very long name for an orchestra, I wonder, during your last years in Berlin as a clarinetist, were you taking conducting lessons, or had you had some conducting lessons beforehand? Were you conducting amateurs and youth orchestras in your spare time when you weren't playing clarinet with the Berlin Philharmonic? How was the process before the day when you said, that's it, I'm going to stop playing the clarinet? Was it always bubbling in the background?
I started, of course, with some things where I played as a soloist and did this kind of play conduct thing, And then I I had a possibility. It was actually funny. In 2001 there was I was invited by Riccardo Muti. He formed kind of a international orchestra to play some memorial concert in New York. There were people from Berlin, from Vienna, and so on. And so I was there playing first clarinet in Eroica. And on the way back, there was a guy from the Italian festival in Ravenna. He gave me a call. He says, "Maestro, I have a wonderful, very good professional orchestra, freelance orchestra, but very professional in Italy. I would love you to conduct this." And I wrote back to him, or I said, "But how do you know that I can conduct? I mean, you never saw me conduct." And he says, "Yeah, I watched you in this whole week now in New York, and actually I think you will be a good conductor." And then I went to Forlì, to this place in Emilia-Romagna, for some years, every year, 3-4 times, and conducted repertoire, started some opera conducting, and that was the beginning. And then Daniel Barenboim saw something of me, saw me conducting, and then he says, "Look, I think you are talented. You want to come to assist me?" And then I was running for 2-3 years from basically from the service in the Philharmonic, from the Philharmonie to the Staatsoper, to conduct the piano rehearsals of Meistersinger, and then back to the afternoon rehearsal, and then back to the Staatsoper. This is how I went in. And then suddenly I was supposed to play as a soloist with the orchestra in Halle on a concert, festival concerts. I was supposed to play the Weber concerto, clarinet concerto. And then at the same time, they had a huge trouble and huge fight with their old music director. Then short before these concerts, this music director, there was his name Klaus Weise, actually a good old German opera conductor, he threw everything and he ran away. And then the agency called me and said, "We have no conductor for these concerts, but we heard that you are conducting also. So can you also conduct the Schubert C Major Symphony and the Beethoven 8 and some Meistersinger excerpts or something on this festival with the orchestra and play the clarinet concerto?" And I said, "Of course." And then I said yes. And that was like 2 weeks later. And I took the pieces. I knew them, of course, already very well. I did. And then that was quite successful. And then half a year later, I got a phone call from Halle that they say, "Now it's fixed. Our music director is gone. Do you want," and we made a vote in the orchestra, "do you want to be our new music director?" And then I went to Barenboim. Then I said, "Look, what shall I do?" And he says, "So that's your chance. If not now, when do you want to do that? That you're not young. You're not now. All the conductors, they are 23, 24, 25. I was 40. So that was the time. Yeah, I did it.
Well, it's a great journey that sort of was running alongside your clarinet playing life until eventually it took over.
Yeah.
And you were there 9 years, is that correct, as music director?
I was in Halle only 5 years.
Oh, in Halle only 5 years, yeah.
In Ludwigshafen, I was 9 years, yes.
Yeah, with the Rhineland-Pfalz, yeah.
Actually, when I started Halle, that at the same time, the guys from Rhineland-Pfalz came to me and said, we are looking for a new music director, you would be the one. And then was a little bit this, this Staatsphilharmonie Rheinland-Pfalz is the biggest and most important orchestra here of this state, Rheinland-Pfalz, where I was born. So, and I spent my whole youth with all these people playing there, and it was kind of a homecoming.
Also good places for you to not only cover repertoire that you hadn't conducted, obviously you played it all, but also to discover new repertoire. And I'm assuming now you're getting guest engagements, which on this podcast, 2 regular phrases I use, that you're going on first dates with orchestras. which is where I would have met you. I played for you when you came to Birmingham for the first time. And also, I like to call it the hamster wheel of conducting, where, you know, the hamster gets on the wheel. It loves running on the wheel, but sometimes it's difficult to get off.
Yeah.
So was it good to be able to come home to the Rhineland or to Halle and do those jobs there and just have the odd first date at the beginning?
I think it was absolutely important for me, because it's still important to have an orchestra for yourself, you know, where you can, first of all, you can conduct the repertoire, you can build up a certain repertoire with the orchestra that is really close to you. And when you have the guest conducting, is always, you have to take over everything what they offer you, you know, what they give you. And sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't fit. And in Ludwigshafen, I was able to do a lot of the you know, I'm if you would say, the classic German romantic conductor. Brahms, Wagner, Bruckner. I did Bruckner cycle. I did the whole ring cycle of Wagner and all this. But at the same time, I did a lot of 20th century, where we actually were very successful, also with the music critics, and kind of a wide repertoire that interests me a lot. And I could keep myself away from Shostakovich and all this stuff, where I still do not feel at home. Maybe I'm not Russian enough, but so when you have your own orchestra, it's great. You know exactly what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. You choose your repertoire, and with the guest conducting, with the time, you have these orchestras that you go like 1 time, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and then the orchestra starts to ask you, what would you like to conduct the next time? And then it's the moment to say, yeah, maybe we could do, or whatever, piece by Zemlinsky or by whatever, Bruckner or whatever. So it's it takes time. It takes time. I very much admire the young guys now who are 25, conduct everything. I'm happy that this took some years now for me to really develop this whole process. I don't want to be in the, did you call it, the wheel?
The hamster wheel, yes.
The hamster wheel is not for me.
Well, it's very interesting, because even though the episodes might go out in a different order, yesterday I spoke to Osmo Vanska, who also was a principal clarinet before he became a conductor. And he said almost identically to you, he was very glad that it all took quite a while and quite a long time for things to happen. He was glad he wasn't in a rush. He was glad that he'd done his time in orchestras, that helped him become a better conductor. But he was very glad with the speed that it happened, and it just gently opened out for him. It sounds like you're the same. And personally, whilst, you know, when I stopped playing when I was 44, but, you know, at the time I wanted it all to just explode, but of course it hasn't. It's gradually opened. It means that I've become friends with orchestras, as you've said, to go somewhere 3, 4, 5 times, and then they say, well, Mike, what would you like to do this time? Well, I think that's much nicer than just first dates and spinning around like a lunatic.
Absolutely. And also, it is very important you realize in the beginning you do sometimes maybe too much. You do things that you shouldn't do. You know, sometimes, you know, you ask yourself, why did I get a re-invitation to this orchestra and not to the other orchestra? And you ask yourself, and yes, because on the other orchestra, besides the fact that there's always a certain chemistry important that you cannot really control, but mostly it's because I conducted the wrong piece there. And so with the time you learn about your repertoire, and I have to say, I did now, for example, I mean, just a simple example, Brahms symphonies. I did them now many times, and every time now when I get back to it, I have the feeling it's really good that I had to conduct Brahms' First Symphony maybe 25 different times in order to really understand the inner process of this piece. So it's good. It's good to it's a little bit unmodern, a little bit old-fashioned, but to take time is not bad.
Well, something else that takes time, Karl, is opera. And as somebody who grew up playing in symphony orchestras like Bavaria and like Berlin, how did you first get into conducting operas? And how did you find the process? Because the process is a lot longer in time than the average week that you would spend with a symphony orchestra. Is it something you really enjoy? Well, it must be, because you've had a job at Norwegian National Opera and you just started at the Prague State Opera, so it is something you enjoy. So what is it about it that you do?
Look, there was always the question for me, do I want to be a conductor for symphonic repertoire or for opera, also opera? And it was very clear to me from the very first moment, I can only be a kind of a full-size conductor when I do both. Because you really learn how to handle the process when you are in opera house. And not only in the rehearsal, you have to conduct Traviata 25 times in order to understand what really is going on stage. And I remember the Marek Janowski, the German conductor, who has a kind of a way of expressing himself which is rather direct. He told me in the beginning, Steffens, you want to be a conductor, you have to conduct opera. And one thing is absolutely necessary. In the opera, you have to smell the shit before it's laying on stage. And this is like, he's absolutely right. You learn anticipation, you learn to understand different speeds and different time frames on stage, next to the stage, backstage, under the stage, and so on. And this is what you have to learn. But at the end, I have to say, I want to conduct opera because I love to work with singers. Mm. I think singing is, maybe it comes from the clarinet, maybe it comes from the wind instrument, but singing is for me very, very important. And to work now with very good singers is really a blessing. So that's the reason why it turned me always into opera as well.
Well, something's just popped into my head in the fact that with opera houses, it is so different how it works. But also, what did pop into my head was remembering when you came to us in Birmingham, and I'm just going to add this extra question in. I remember lots of us saying, "Oh, we really like him because he feels like he's one of us," which of course you were. You were an ex-player, which almost made it okay to like the conductor because you were one of us. Are you aware of that when you go into places, or now because you've been conducting so long, have you forgotten that people are like that? I've had it said to me because I was one of them. Oh, you're one of us. You know what it takes. You know how to fix things. How have you approached that one of us mentality that they have?
Look, I mean, this is everywhere the same. The orchestras, I think they understand that. Of course, obviously, I was sitting more than 20 years on the same place. They are sitting, and I feel the dynamic of them, and I think it's very helpful because there is a certain border between conductor and orchestra, which is simply not there. We are connected from the very first moment, but at the end, the orchestra doesn't like a conductor only because he's nice or because he's one of them. So they expect a lot. I think I expected always a lot from a conductor as a clarinet player. And I think they also expect a lot from me because I need to give them something that they can't achieve alone.
Absolutely.
I have to how do you say, to bring the forces together in order to give something like an interpretation, which an orchestra of 80, 90, whatever people cannot do by itself. Otherwise, it's kind of a neutral thing, There are these amazing chamber orchestras. They play like a machine, but it's actually no interpretation, because it's clean and nothing else than that. No, the conductor has to give something special, and that's so I realized that it really doesn't help if an orchestra says, "Oh, we like him because he's one of us." This is nice, this is good, this is helpful for the process of work, but at the end, there has to come more from the conductor than this.
I agree, and that's what I'd hoped you'd say, that you want to be booked. You want to be booked again because you are a great conductor, not because you used to be one of them. And now it's getting to the stage where people are. I hear it less and less and less as my career has gone on, and I'm sure it's the same for you now. That people, you're being booked as a conductor, and that's as it should be. No, I completely agree with you. So I'm so glad you said that. I have one other question before we do the 10 questions, and it's a question I've asked every conductor, because conductors and students and conducting geeks find it interesting. When you have a new score or a new piece or a piece that you haven't done for 15 years, how do you go about learning it? Do you have a process? You start at page 1 and work your way through, or differently? And do you write in with black, red, blue, orange, yellow pencils, or do you keep your scores completely clean?
I have two colors, red and blue, and I mark things that I think are very important for the process, especially when I study a score. It's full of marks. At the end, when the process is finished of preparation, I could also take another score, take a blank score. This is not so important anymore for the moment of the concert or the performance, but I need to put all my thoughts and ideas and into the score. But I need to be able to read the score. You know what I mean? To read the structure, the timing, the phrasing. Have to analyze the piece in a way, in my way, and mostly when the piece is the score is worked out like this, at the end I know it by heart. For example, I do the big repertoire, symphonic repertoire, always without score, because I don't need it anymore. When I'm able to read a Bruckner 9 symphony, and I read the score really for months carefully, then I know the piece simply. I know how it goes, and then I don't need it. I mean, in the opera it's different. I would never conduct an opera by heart. Only some geniuses can do that, but I can't, because I feel that in the opera every night millions of disasters happen, and I have to be able to react to them.
Yeah, very wise. I've done 2 or 3 operas, and I know there's no way. It's that old thing, they never work with children and animals, and it's much the same with opera. Never work with opera singers. Scene changes, lighting, people. Yeah, it's anything can go wrong. That's a brilliant answer, Carly. It is 10 question time, and I will start at the very beginning, which is: what sound or noise do you love, and what sound or noise do you hate?
When I was now on Corona vacation, let's say, it was the springtime, and I have to say the sound of a walk in a forest in springtime in the early evening, like at 4 or 5 o'clock, was for me every day. It was like a medicine. It's an amazing sound, and I thought of Messiaen and of all composers together, and wonderful. What I hate is techno music, because I think if you send me to hell, I imagine hell to be techno music without end. So I'm sorry.
I have to tell you an amusing story because I'm much the same. I cannot stand techno music. I was once staying with my wife in a hotel in Épernay in France, where Champagne is from, when we were visiting the Champagne vineyards just for a weekend. And we were in a very noisy hotel, and our room was directly above the bar. And we were just going to sleep at about 2 a.m. when somebody screamed through a microphone, "Techno!" And then for the next hour, it was exactly as you've just described. The room was shaking and bouncing. And yeah,
It's hell. It's hell.
If you had 24 hours free, what would you spend it doing?
Honestly, right now, I have to say 24 hours to spend them with first of all, with the family, especially with my two sons, the younger sons. I have 4 children, but the daughters are already grown up. They have already their own children. But the boys are 8 and 14, and to spend time with them is just amazing. It makes me feel old because I have to play football with them, and after that, all my bones hurt. But it's the best time I can have.
Who would be a favorite conductor of yesteryear?
I have to say, it will be Furtwängler.
And any reason for Furtwängler, or it just happens to be your favorite? That doesn't have to be a reason.
No, but when I listen to recordings, this is the only thing we have. Not all of them. Some of them I don't agree. Especially in Bruckner, I never agreed with him because I think it's too crazy. But he makes the music really come out of itself. It's to shape something that is not 100% clear, to give it a dimension in time. This was unbelievable with Furtwängler. You can criticize millions of things about him, but he was, for me, it's the genius among the conductors.
Brilliant answer. And who would be a favorite current conductor or conductors?
Current conductors. I always used to say Carlos Kleiber, but Carlos is dead now. And current conductor, I have the closest contact to Daniel Barenboim, who still is, for me, one of the last real geniuses of music that is still alive, and pretty well alive, much alive. And I would say this is, for me, to spend also with him half an hour discussing about a score or discussing about music, and we get together a lot and we discuss. He's the most open person, welcoming person for people like me to sit together, smoke cigar, and chat about Beethoven. Is just unbelievable. And for me, he's the one.
What is the hardest work you have ever conducted?
I tell you something. I think, for me, the most difficult work to conduct, and I think I never ever reached a version that really would satisfy me, is Prélude à l'après-midi d'un faune from Claude Debussy. Because this is music, first of all, that is so away from every, it's a complicated score, but it sounds totally uncomplicated. It sounds totally natural, but you have to conduct everything very clear, otherwise the orchestra gets completely lost. And but when you conduct very clear, then you go against the music. So it's like you are in between these two chairs, and it's not easy. And I never ever was satisfied with what I heard, and also with what I did. Maybe this will come one day. I hope.
Yeah, but you're so right. I mean, it's a piece where time seems to just time doesn't exist. But you're often conducting 12 very small beats in a bar, which makes it look like time is incredibly existing, because it looks like you're being a little metronome. But if you don't conduct in 12, or at least subdivide very clearly, as you say, it's very difficult for the players. Yeah, you're right. It's a tough piece. The wonderful thing about that question is that I think you're the 43rd person I've interviewed, and other than one piece that's cropped up 3 times, everybody has given a different answer. which is brilliant. I'm loving that. Number 7, when travelling abroad to conduct, what item could you not leave home without?
My little humidor with Cuban cigars.
Brilliant.
Because I love to smoke them, especially in the evenings after rehearsals. It's getting more and more difficult, and it's even inappropriate to talk about it, because now, what, you want to smoke cigars? So people look at you as if a murderer or somebody. But and there is not even, there used to be wonderful cigar lounges and so on, but this is less and less and less and less. So it's really difficult, but it's the best possible way after work to sit even with a friend or colleague and chat about music, drink a glass and smoke a nice cigar. And this is what I never leave at home.
Well, I'm sure by now most of my listeners will know that I do smoke because they can hear it in my voice. And yeah, I agree. It's something lovely about a Cuban cigar. I have a small humidor box of them downstairs, which are not looked after anything like as well as they should be. But yeah, it's a lovely way to relax. I'm with you on that one. What is the one thing you would change about being a conductor?
Very personal, I tell you exactly. I wish I had a talent to compose music, which I obviously don't have, and I always think that conductors in the past, so good composers, were also better conductors. The understanding for a composition is very important, and I think it's easier to understand something when you are a creative person by yourself. This is something I really regret, that God didn't give me the gift for composing.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
If I would not have become a musician, I would have become an archaeologist. Because that was, I'm coming from Trier. Trier is the old Roman city. You find, whenever you dig in your garden, you find old parts from amphoras or whatever. And I grew up with that. And I always thought to discover a tomb in an Egyptian pyramid would be the dream of my life. If not, the much higher dream would be to conduct the ultimate version of a Bruckner symphony. But yeah, archaeologist.
If the world were to end tonight, what would be your choice of final food and drink?
Oh, also, first of all, a glass of excellent Riesling from the Mosel, from my home, because this is the taste of my whole existence, And with it, what would I eat? Definitely something from the grill. A nice entrecote from the grill with simple potatoes and some salad, very simple, Riesling, and then Donald Trump can finish everything if he wants.
Well, hopefully after you finish that and before Donald Trump finishes it all off, we might sit with a cigar and a brandy and talk long into the night. And when all of this is over, Karl-Heinz, that's what I wish to do one day. I'd love to thank you for the last hour. It's been really good fun. And as I said, one day I'm going to catch up with you and we'll sit and have that cigar.
Absolutely.
A Mic on the Podium was devised and produced by Michael Seal, with music by Ben Dawson. Next time, I chat to an English conductor who has held title positions in both Germany and the Netherlands, and is due to start as chief conductor of the Finnish Radio Symphony Orchestra in 2021. He is arguably best known for conducting the Aurora Orchestra since its foundation in 2004. Until then, bye-bye!